I have had a very successful career raising money. I've raised over $8 billion. That's led to $30 billion in follow-on assets for investment boutiques against some incredible odds and in one of the toughest boys clubs, Wall Street. But on paper, none of that makes sense. I am a blue-collar kid from a working-class town who got the wrong degree from the wrong school. And as you said, I'm a woman. I also didn't set out to be here. I didn't set out to work in investments. I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I really wanted to be a college professor in literature. I was a writer, a poet, a storyteller. I was also paying my way through university. And in order to realize that dream of being a professor, I was going to have to pay my way through grad school as well. The serendipitous moment, I'm going to come back to imposter syndrome, I promise, but the serendipitous moment for me was that my high school soccer coach and I had stayed in touch. He had a day job besides soccer, which was running a $1 billion small cap equity boutique, and he was launching a new fund. He knew my situation, so he offered me a job and basically said, I know what you want to do. You could come here, you can work with me, save some money, and then go back and get your PhD and become a professor. I explained to him, of course he knew, that sounds great, coach, but I don't know anything about investing. So you can start to see some of the imposter syndrome kernels there. I don't know anything about investing, to which he said, that's fine, I'll teach you. And I never left the industry. I helped him launch that fund. We raised $500 million in 2 years. I raised $3 billion in 3 years for a $17 million fund, and so on and so forth. I think it took me a while to really own that in an industry full of men who love numbers, there was a place for a girl who loved words. And to be honest with you, I did not realize that I was doing anything special. It took me a few years actually to realize that what I was doing was super difficult. Raising money for startups and new funds. And it probably took me 10 years to really unpack what I was actually doing. And at the heart of that was storytelling. So if you have that knowledge of my journey to sit here, in the early days, obviously, I was working for other founders, and now I have my own business, which was a whole nother level of imposter syndrome. But just in the sort of kernels I've shared with you so far, female, blue collar, wrong school, not a math or finance or economics degree. I don't have a CFA. I didn't know anyone in this business. I mean, for like every reason, I don't make sense. And for a long time, when I first got out of school, the worst question someone could ask me was, where did you go to school? I literally wanted to die. I would want to crawl under the table and hide, because it was this no-name state school in a sea of people who had Harvard and Yale and Cambridge and Oxford and all these fancy degrees. And I thought, the only way I'm ever going to feel like I belong is if I go back to school and get a graduate degree from one of those fancy schools, and then I can sort of be one of the crew, right? Or then I went through this phase where I was like, maybe I need my CFA. I know Jenna has her CFA. Maybe I need that. I just felt like I needed some sort of external third-party stamp to say she belongs here. And that was a huge struggle for me for probably at least 5-7 years of being in this industry. Then it sort of went away. And then I think it came, rushing back when I launched my own firm. So I'll pause there. But that was the first sort of battle, if you will, with imposter syndrome for me.
Stacy, obviously, we're talking about you, but I think that you and I have been around enough, by other people's definition, incredibly successful entrepreneurs. Yet we see this happen again and again where, well, I don't know if I can do that. Well, I don't know if that really fits me or that makes me uncomfortable. Where do you think imposter syndrome comes from? Like, I mean, whether it's from your observation or what you've experienced yourself, like, what's the genesis of it?
It had something to do with, like, my worth, not from a financial sense, and, like, something around worth and deserving. Um, that really for me, like, no matter what success or, you know, dollar amount I raised or what thing, it just never felt like enough. There's always another thing to prove and another goal. We talk a lot about in as entrepreneurs, we talk a lot about, like, the goalpost keeps moving. There was a lot of that, and I just felt like I was always working for the next proof point, the next bona fide to prove that I belonged. And it probably wasn't until I turned 40. So right now I'm 40. What am I? I'm 48. When I turned 40 and I had my first and only child, my daughter, something like a switch flipped for me. A switch flipped for me. Like, I kind of felt like, if I can do that, if I can, if I, if I can do that, like, I can do anything. And it gave me a different, I mean, I think that comes with maybe age anyway, but, like, having a child gave me a level of confidence and that deserving and that worth that I just couldn't believe.
It's so interesting you said that about the worth. I think that even in like my own journey, I think there's a level of, did I feel actually worthy of the success or the recognition? And so often, I think we as entrepreneurs, we hear words of affirmation or accolades. It's like, oh, they're just being really nice versus truly allowing them to come in and kind of soothe the lack of worthiness of that. And I'm curious, does that do you kind of like, does that resonate with you?
It super resonates, and we haven't talked in a while, so, like, this is, like, it's crazy just how how mind melded we are sometimes. Because now, so we kinda talked about the then imposter syndrome, then I kinda, like, stepped into this, like, real strength around, the 40 mark. I started working through some of the, like, hiding in the shadows issues. I joined Coach, I met you, I started hanging out with entrepreneurs, I felt less weird because I had found my people, right? So, like, I really, and I started really kinda stepping into my own. What's interesting now is, the business is evolving, it's pivoting, I'm sort of, like, looking at the next phase of the business. And while maybe the past 8 years have been a lot of working through imposter syndrome issues externally, you know, launching a podcast, doing big speaking engagements, having a big personal brand on LinkedIn, big for me anyway. All of those things had imposter syndrome wrapped up in them. But what's interesting is it was very external. Right now, what's happening for me is a very internal type of imposter syndrome. Um, and in some ways, it's almost a little bit more, there's more sharpness to it. So I have actually just started for, like, I mean, I've done affirmations, but I'll be very honest. I get a little, like, okay, it's a bit woo woo. Like, I don't know. It feels weird to do it. I've never done them looking in the mirror. I've never done that. Like, I've said things, repeated things. I've never stood in front of a mirror and done, like, an affirmation exercise until this week. Like, literally. That's what I'm saying. It's so weird that we're mind melding here. Standing in front of a mirror, saying the words, I am a successful entrepreneur. And continue on. And at the end, I said, I am proud of you. That was I'm welling up with tears just thinking about it because I've never said that to myself. I've never looked myself straight in the eye and said those words. And I thought, well, gee, I mean, it's not that difficult. I could have done this 20 years ago, but like, it's very powerful.
Stacy, I find that so interesting as I'm listening to you talk about just these internal like dialogues. And it makes me think that long before social media actually became like a thing and that social media really started affecting our internal confidences coming from external sort of influences that we had like Facebook pages, we had Instagram pages that were internal where we started documenting and dialoguing. Now the question is, were we documenting with the right filter? Were we actually hearing it? Was this in terms of like a spin cycle that a rumor got started internally, right? And I think about we've been building all of these internal structures that have been starting to like atomic habit wise, like building these 1%, 1%, 1%. And that it's like the phrase that, you're losing so slowly, you think you're winning. And I'm really curious as I'm listening you talk about these affirmations and standing in front of a mirror and really just recognizing who you are to yourself, which is so weird because you would think the person who know yourself the best would be yourself. And I'm curious, when you had said, I wish I would have done this 20 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about what do you feel like, not only for you, but what keeps people from standing in front of a mirror and saying, I'm proud of you?
Yeah. I mean, it felt weird. Like, it did. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it felt very Saturday Night Live, Stuart Smalley kind of thing going on of like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, gosh darn it, people like me. Like that. So some of it is just maybe our own ego around what I shouldn't need to do that. Like shoulding on ourselves, right? Like, I shouldn't need to do this. I'm a grown ass woman. Like, do I really need to stand in front of a mirror and give myself a high five? It feels like even the fact, at least for me, even the fact that I quote need to do this is further evidence of how much I don't deserve to be an entrepreneur. The fact that I need to do an affirmation is actually a proof point that I shouldn't be doing this because I'm not qualified. So there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in even the decision to do it. So today was my second day of doing it. And I was like, okay, so stand in front of the mirror again, and we're going to do the affirmation again. And it was, a touch less weird and a touch less emotional, but still felt incredibly, powerful to say those words. And the big thing was the end, because I did not write down that last sentence of I am proud of you. I said that on the fly. It wasn't my intention to tell myself that I am proud of you. But, geez, that maybe was the most important part.
Wow. Especially, I think about, you have a 8-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how has that flowed over into your identity as being also a mom. Oh, by the way, in addition to being a badass entrepreneur, you're a badass mom.
It's, I think it was look, obviously becoming a parent is a turning point in every person's life. And I think it has made me, so first on the entrepreneur point and then coming to the mom point. Being a mom has made me a better entrepreneur, where I think a lot of the rhetoric or status quo language would say, oh, it's going to make you less successful as an entrepreneur because you're distracted, you got other things, your priorities have changed and blah, blah, blah. I think for me, one of the biggest things that becoming a parent has helped me do is basically say, I don't have time for this shit. So my tolerance for just garbage is extremely low, because I'm not going to sit here where before I could work late and do all that stuff. Not something I want to do now. I want to get home to my family. So nutshell, whatever's happening here, because this is just not, it's in my way. So so that process has helped me focus on what really matters. When I'm at my desk, I am going to do the most important things because I do not want to be at my desk for longer than I need to be. So being a mom has helped me be a better entrepreneur. On the flip side, being an entrepreneur has done amazing things for me as a mom. I think whether you're an entrepreneur or not, being a mom and being a working mom has a lot of guilt wrapped up in it. There's a lot of guilt wrapped up in it. So I was just in London last week. Willa and Eric were not with me, so I went alone. And that's hard. It's hard to get on a plane on Monday and come back on Friday. And there's a lot of feelings about that. However, I remind myself that we can't be it if we can't see it. And so for her, I want her to see that her mom is doing the thing. I am building a business. I am traveling to London. I am what she can be. And it's important for me not only that I'm present for her today as an 8-year-old, but that when she's 40 or she's 48, she's like, no, my mom was killing it and I can too. And that is a big part of my motivation.
That's incredible. And just so the audience understands, when she said, I'm, sort of doing this LinkedIn thing, she's getting millions of views. And, I'm finding people being like, hey, do you know this Stacy person? And I'm like, Stacy who? They're like, Stacy Havener. And I'm like, yeah. Like, well, how do you know her? LinkedIn. And so I think that's pretty incredible. What are the things that you feel the most imposter as you move forward when you think about future Stacy?
Well, you said something when we were in the green room that what was the takeaway? If it doesn't challenge you, it
won't change you.
As an entrepreneur, we're sort of never really done, right? And we get bored and we want to do new things. So yeah, I mean, I think it's in our DNA. So that's really big for me right now. So what is next? And what's the next challenge? And when you push yourself into the next thing, the imposter syndrome comes back again, right? So it's like you're comfortable, you're starting to get complacent, you're starting to get bored, and then you're like, no, this isn't it. I've got what's next. I think for me, the finance and investment industry will always have my heart. It will always have my heart. These are my people. This is my core community. I will run through a wall for the investment and wealth and just boutique founders in this space, and I will always run through a wall for them. I think what's interesting in this next phase is maybe some other version of it. I've brought words and storytelling into the investment space, and I've also learned a lot that has added to my ability as a storyteller and a salesperson and marketing person, all the things. And now it's almost like coming back the other way. Like, okay, what can I take now from my time here, my 20 plus years in the investment world, raising money and journalism, and come back over now to other founders, maybe in other industries, who could take some of the frameworks and playbooks that we've used to raise money in the fund world and put them to good use in their unique endeavors. I think what started that for me, and this is still very much like in the works, is you and I were in a group years ago about writing a book. And this year, finally, how many years later? 7? I don't even know. A lot of years later, I finally did a book proposal and I met with a publisher. And when I met with the publisher, and, again, here I am sitting in the investment industry. I met with the publisher and they came back, and it's about, your story is money, which I firmly believe. And they came back and said, this is great. So great. You've got this really great following in the investment space, but we can't help but think this is bigger. This is bigger than the investment space. This is more universal. And we want you to really think about that. Are you willing to step into this on a broader scale? And I'll never forget, they said, and we want you to think about, like, are you willing to be a global thought leader? To which my first thing is, what the fuck's a global thought leader? Like, what is that job? I don't know what that job is. Okay. So, of course, what happens? Imposter syndrome comes roaring back. Who the F do you think you are? Global thought leader? You don't even know what it is. So you certainly can't be it. Right? I basically fell out of my chair. I'm pretty sure I burst into tears. I'm still processing. And the hard part for me is not sabotaging it.
Talk to me about that.
I think at least for me, when imposter syndrome really gets nasty, I'll just duck out. Almost like the imposter syndrome version that's sitting on my shoulder says to me, that's as far as we go. They said that to you. That's enough. Like, that's enough now. Stand down. You don't do things like that.
Yeah.
And I listen. And that's been a pattern. And I don't want it to be. Have you ever read the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari?
No, but that sounds incredibly intriguing.
Yeah. Okay, so it's this guy, Robin Sharma. He wrote the 5 a.m. Club.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, so he's got this book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Very similar to like a Go-Giver type of book. So it's a fable, it's an anecdote. And so I'm reading this right now. So it's all these different frameworks essentially that, you're learning through story.
Yep.
Hi, right up my alley. And the chapter I'm on is about goal setting. And it's got like five sort of pillars of goal setting. And one of them, a lot of this stuff, it's like you already kind of know it, but there was like one thing that really hit for me, which was the public pledge. So it's like, you get clear on your goal and then say it on a podcast. Okay. Say it on LinkedIn. Exactly. Make a public pledge, because now you got stakes.
Yeah.
Now you got stakes. Not that you can't walk back. Of course you can. But like, you got stakes now. You said you were going to do it. Are you really? Now you got to show up. And maybe that's part of this for me. Because I haven't talked much about the book thing. I have certainly not said anything about the global thought leader thing. And I want to have enough confidence to say something to myself like, why not me?
Stacy, it is sort of mind-boggling to me when I hear you like say some of those things. And again, this is coming back for the audience. I've known Stacy, like increasing depth of like our friendship over the last 10 years. And so I've had a front row seat to watching you do what you do. And it's almost like you aren't even aware of the impact. So when I look back and I go, thought leader, and you've raised $8 billion for like the little guy. You are probably the most gifted storyteller. I know that Donald Miller is, known as like, the story brand, right? And the thing that I think that you do is you capture the umami of someone's story. And that's really hard to capture. And quite frankly, it's really hard to formalize. And and so I also, when I was listening to you, I had this sort of aha that I was having a conversation with another entrepreneur, and what came out of that conversation was that we often are putting out into the world what we are trying to create for ourselves. And I'm really curious because it seems like you are when your story kind of leading up to this, that you are actually developing the plot, the narrative, the characters, the hero, the anti-hero of your own story. And so I'm really curious, when you think about building your own story and this like public pledge, like like when I say those things aloud, I mean, what does that make you think?
But I want to say something about Donald Miller and the umami idea, which I really love. And then we'll go back to the owning the story piece. Because Donald Miller is brilliant. I love story brand. Brilliant. The missing piece for me, and I'm super passionate about this, is that what you're describing, that word umami, and like just like, is very, very difficult to do for a company. Because companies don't have souls. The people in the company are the ones with the soul. And so the missing piece for me with story brand, and sort of where I'm hoping this book is going to step in, is that if you really want your company to lean in on story and use story to, generate money and wealth and growth and all of those things that we want as entrepreneurs, you have to give it a face. You have to give it a face. And that's the missing piece in story brand for me, the human part. And I think this becomes even more important now, because if you think about all the different types of economies that we've had, the one we're in right now, in my mind, is a reputation economy. It's a reputation, not an attention economy. An attention economy would say, give me all the likes. Give me all the views and all the likes from all the people. And that's kind of where there's an element of that. But I would challenge to say, perhaps the healthier, more lasting version of that, especially as entrepreneurs, is that this is an economy built on reputation. And your company can certainly have a reputation, but the way it really gets that heart and that soul to it is from the people behind it, especially the founder. If it's a founder-led company, you are the face. And if you think that you don't need a personal brand or your personal brand doesn't matter, I would challenge you and say, you're wrong. Because that enters rooms before you. It enters rooms you're not even in. It's in countries you're not even in. I mean, and I'm coming back to own the story, but we talked a little bit about LinkedIn. I'm going to tell you, like, it still boggles my mind. Okay. When I'm in London and I get a message in my DMs that says, I think I just saw you on the street, or I'm at the airport and someone comes up to me at the gate and says, are you Stacy Havener? That's bizarre to me. Like, that makes me want to start bawling. because it just blows my mind. So the reputation economy and sort of the personal brand is the missing piece for me in story brand, because it's really much more about the company. So I think there's maybe a place for what he's doing, and sort of what I am proposing is an add-on to that, which is a great dovetail into your question about owning your story and this whole idea of the public pledge. I mean, I think, at least for me and maybe for others, there's a real risk that we live someone else's story. Our parents, what we think we should do, the jobs we should have, what that should look like, all the way down to like how we show up, how we talk, how we dress, all the things, right? And the real magic is when we own the story. And you can take it back anytime you want. You know, I feel like I took it back. I took it back probably when I became an entrepreneur. And I said, if anyone is going to write my story, it's damn well going to be me. Because I spent too many years struggling to be somebody I thought I should be.
Well, now you add on, then you have your daughter. Talk about further claiming this ownership. And now you have like this momentum as you're going into this publisher going, hold on, this isn't your story's money. Like, your story's your soul, and money just happens to be the natural outcome, right? Like, and you should be a global leader. I mean, as I'm listening to you talk, Stacy, and not only that, but the conviction.
Oh yeah, no, that lights me up. I mean, that topic you just hit on is like, okay, let's go.
That's amazing. If everyone can know their recipe card of what makes their soul, like in food terms, taste so good. Just imagine.
Imagine. I mean, think about it, and think about even for you, and think about for the people we know that are entrepreneurs. The idea that your story has actual, real freaking value. People choose to hire us, and we think, I mean, do we really though? Do we really think it's because of the widget we built? Or like, you know, the fact that we can like deliver this service a smidge faster? Or in the asset management world, do you really think people are buying your 2 basis points of outperformance? Come on. That's not how people do business. People do business with people. And so it would then, you can easily deduce that if that's true, then who you are as a person matters a hell of a lot more than we're giving it any credit or putting any intention around.
So when you think about someone editing their current story, right? So everything that's led them to now, what are the top 3 things that you feel, based off of, I would kind of want to bring us up to where we're at currently right now, that they could do to go back and when they look at their own internal copy, again, for everyone who doesn't know, copy is their own internal like narrative, what they've actually written, the obstacles, or understanding who's the villain, who's the anti-hero, who's the hero. What would you be telling someone? Or, let's even put this, what would you be telling the Stacy 20 years ago?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And I think the most difficult part of owning your story is walking into the danger zone. So in order for a story to resonate, it needs to have those stakes that we were talking about. It needs to have high stakes. If you think about any movie or any book, like you think about the movie Taken, right, with Liam Neeson and someone takes her, like if she just was at the mall and she didn't hear her phone ring, there's no freaking movie, right? Like that, there's no point. No one cares, right? So what's challenging when we try to tell our story, especially in a professional setting, is we don't talk about the stakes. We edit all that out. We show up with our super profesh self and we list bullet points of all the places we've worked and the things we've achieved. And we're like, boom, story. And then everyone else is like, don't care. Like, cool resume, bro, but don't care. Because we've left out the thing that makes other people care, the thing that makes us memorable, which are the hard bits, the messy middle, the shared emotional experiences, the universal experiences that we all go through. And so if we aren't willing to sort of go into that danger zone, it falls flat. It falls flat. So, when I tell my backstory and I go into the parts about being the blue collar kid and having to pay my way through school and going to a state school and all of it, feeling out of place and all these things, those are shared experiences. Is everyone going to relate to them? No, but a lot of people will. And so when we look back at our story, we sort of have the exercise is to go to the place, usually somewhere in our childhood, early, adulthood, that there was some pain. And then kind of sit in it for a second and figure out what is the thread from that, the stakes from that now, today, make you passionate about what you do, make you the guide that somebody should choose. How has that thing, those stakes, prepared you to be exactly where you are, serving the heroes you serve? And so what often happens, and I'm talking, our clients are very successful, very wealthy, very accomplished. When I do these story sessions with them, it's usually me and them, two people. And oftentimes they cry. And the first few times it happened, I was like, wow, now I'm so fine with tears. And so it's a very okay thing. But they've never done that. No, they think, and we often think, no one cares. Why would anyone care about that? And the reality is they do care because they see themselves in your story. The hard parts of getting your story into a place that it's actually going to resonate and be memorable and move people. Before they do something, they need to feel something. So move them to do something. We have to go back into the danger zone. We have to find those stakes. We have to pull that thread forward to today and our why. And the other big piece is to take the backstory to today and then show a glimpse of the future story. And here's what I mean by that. If we are the guide, not the hero, if we are the guide to our clients who are the heroes, our backstory is the one time that we're sort of the main character, right? Only in the context that we want our clients to choose us. So the ending of the backstory has to then invite that prospect in and show how together you're going to the destination that they want to go to. So it's kind of like all about you, but then at the end, you got to then say, and basically, this is why I am the guide for you to get you where you want to go. That little piece at the end often gets left out because the backstory just goes blah, 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 and here I am.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you are saying, hey, it's actually the pain points is actually where all the gold, the umami is. And I had this experience, as in terms of with my son Benny and the him being born, and then 16 days later you know, um, moving on, is that I have a real understanding of why people don't want to dive into their own backstory. 'Cause it's really hard, and it took from December of 2023 until December of 2024 for me to be able to write it. Like, I was clear about it. If you asked me about it, I would talk about it. For me to write it down, and I did it for in December to raise money for days, which is the charity that we did, uh, give families the gift of time, as a continuation of Benny. But when I wrote down the story, it's very much a backstory, me and my wife, Jenna, and, in terms of, like, a very really pivotal point in our life, and I remember writing that, and it was hard to write the story, and I procrastinated for a year to write the story, and you know what was even harder? Was posting it,
Oh gosh. Oh, I get that.
and it was like, "Is this gonna land?" And I think that that also has to be one of the reasons why people don't wanna dive into the backstory because they're worried that, "Is this going to land?" And and I'm curious, as you think about not just founders, but people who are listening to this, and I even think about for you, like how are you applying this exact same formula? Because I think of it as like a level of filters as you're writing your own story, Stacy, and you think about this blue collar worker who got into industry that, quite frankly, she shouldn't have been in, but yet has literally raised $8 billion and helped, and how many billions of dollars of follow on money as a result of this umami filter that you're able to help people lean into these pain points. When you think about how can we apply these filters for us not just to raise $1 billion, right? Because I think our own self-worth, our own confidence, I mean that's trillions of dollars worth of actual value. How how would you recommend people who are listening to this podcast apply these same filters, and how are you applying it as you're writing your story right now? I mean, you are literally writing pivotal chapters in your own book.
Aren't we all every day? And I'm so proud of you for sharing the Benny piece. And you said something I want to come back to, which is you said that for a year you procrastinated. And I don't want you to say that because that's procrastinating is not the same as processing. And the challenge with storytelling, yeah, is if it's still raw, you can't share it because you don't want to just sort of like bleed all over the page, so to speak. Right? So you have to be in a place where you can share the thing without falling apart. And everyone is entitled to however much time they need to get through that processing. So, yeah, I'm so proud of you for working on this story, and I'm really proud of you for sharing it because that is a whole nother thing. And I want to really see you and hear you and have you feel this that what is challenging about sharing our backstory that is different than like other stories in the story stack that we teach is since it's about us, if it doesn't quote land, guess what that is? Rejection, personal rejection. If I share my backstory and you go, that sucks, what I hear and feel is I suck. So it's incredibly vulnerable to share it because what if no one likes it? What if it bombs? What if the post bombs? All those things feel very personal. So I want you to just hugs and all the things. You did a great job and continue to do a great job. As as far as people listening and how to sort of think about your story, And maybe how do you, not everybody's raising money, not everybody's running a fund. So like, how do these things apply to you? If you believe that in some way, shape, or form, most growth is associated with a sale of some kind. So let's first talk about that. You're either selling something to yourself, you want a new job, you want a raise, you need more budget, you want to get on a board, you want to launch a business, you need clients, you want a book, you want to speak, it's all a sale. It's all a sale of you, right? So if that is true, then your story becomes the path to any of those growth milestones, assets, wealth, really anything you're trying to achieve actually is going to start with the story you tell yourself and the story you tell other people. They're different and they're related, but this work of tapping into your story, you are your own most valuable asset. And it's probably the thing, story and narrative and all this stuff is probably the thing we spend the least amount of time on because we think it's the widget or the features or the benefit or the website or the thing. And we forget that none of that is really great if it lacks a why.
Come on. Simon Sinek's right. People don't buy what you do, how you do it. They buy your why.
Yeah. And they buy you, and be okay with that. The reason we're not okay with it is because, again, we take it personally, right? It's a personal rejection. When you put your story out there, it feels like a personal rejection if somebody doesn't like it. I'm here to tell you, not everyone's going to like you. Okay? That's not a newsflash. We all know that. So even though we all know that, so if not everyone's going to like us, why are we so afraid to be who we really are? And then the answer is, well, because not everyone's going to like me. Well, they already don't. So you might as well show up real.
Yeah, what's that Oscar Wilde quote? You might as well be you because everyone else is taken.
Yeah. And also, like, not everyone likes you even if you don't own your story. So so just come on. I think it's so much potential in this, what we're talking about today. There's so much potential.
Yeah, when I think about the people that I have connected the most with, they're the ones who maybe don't have their story figured out, but you can tell that they have gotten the first page done, or the first chapter, or the first 3 chapters, and that they are in the game. I mean, when I think about the "in the arena" quote, I feel like when he is talking about that, he's literally talking about not about doing big things. What I think about it, it's about you being in the arena, and often the messiest place isn't the external. As you were talking about your story, it was actually the internal. It's actually now that you've turned these personal affirmations in, I find that just, I think it seems so weird to say, but so brave to turn the outer eye inward.
Yeah, that is very true. All of this is brave. There is, like, read any Brene Brown, watch her TED Talk. Like, authenticity is a daily practice, and it takes incredible courage to be who you really are and not what you think other people want you to be. That's what authenticity is. And that's something we have to practice every darn day.
You and I, we're sitting here 5 years from now, 300th episode of Max Life with Ben Laws. What are the chapters that have been written?
It's a great question. Well, the first chapter would be I figure out what a global thought leader is, because that's going to be important to know if I'm going to be one. So that's the next chapter that needs to be written. Look, I made a public pledge about London. I made a public pledge about London that I want to have an office there. I want to have a presence there. I guess does that tick the global box? Maybe. Yeah, should, right? I want to have a book. I mean, those are all sort of, I guess, milestones on the journey. It kind of goes back to my original dream, which was to be a teacher. That was my original dream. And I don't think it's going to be the way I envisioned it at the time, which was I was going to be a professor at a university and have a class, and we'd be reading books and talking about the books, and it'd be, I don't think it's that. But I still think it's teaching. And that makes me happy. Don't make me cry. Because I'm yelling at you, and it's really not you, it's me. But that makes me happy. I spent a long time, or like the bulk of my career, raising money for other people, like helping them build things and getting a lot of satisfaction from that, the doing. I think the next chapters for me are less about the doing and more about the knowing, more about the expertise, more about getting this expertise into the hands of other people to make their own stories as magical and as amazing as they want them to be. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I'm going to be a teacher 5 years from now, and it's going to be cool.
You think about the greatest people, like, I mean, wherever your spiritual preferences lie, Muhammad, Buddha, Dalai Lama, Jesus Christ, right? These are some of the people that literally, they led with their heart, and they led with the intention to be able to teach others. And I think that you already are changing the world, and I think that you are going to change the world. And I'm excited as your friend, and one of your biggest fans to watch you do that. And I'm so glad to have you on this podcast. I'm glad that you're able to share some of your story and about how others can actually find their voice and actually start to filter and capture their story. If people want to get more of you, which would not be surprising, but if people want to know more, how do they get a hold of you? How can they see more of you? Like, what's the best place to see all the things, Stacy, that you put out into the world as a global thought leader?
As a global thought leader, TBD, to be determined at what that actually is. Thank you, Ben, for this, and you, and your inspiration. And I mean, everybody needs a Ben in their corner. I mean, you're having a bad day. You want to know who you call? Ben. Okay? Because he will not allow it. He will not allow you to doubt yourself. He will remind you of all the things that are special about you. And he will literally pick you up by the back of your neck and get you back on your feet and say, and we're off. So I want to thank you. You have done that for me so many times over the years, and in many ways, even on this podcast. So thank you. To answer your question, yeah, where can people find me? I mean, look, I hang out on LinkedIn. So come check it. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a website, which is stacyhavener.com. You can come over there, send me a note. I have my Havener Capital, so if you're a fund manager, you can check us over there. But I would say, honestly, LinkedIn is probably the place I spend most of my digital capital and time.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on, Stacy. It means a great deal, and I appreciate you sharing your story. Appreciate you sharing some of these frameworks and these mindsets and these filters for us all.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.